I didn't want to spend another second of my life doing something that I didn't feel was good, or that I wanted to just be giving positivity. I'm getting to finally scratch that like creative itch that I have, had ever since I was a teenager. So this just feels right. And I think that's why I keep moving forward. Even though I grew up in a small town in Canada, like in Ontario, Toronto for me feels more like home than the small town that I grew up in. Hi, everybody. This is the All of You podcast, where we sit down with all of you and we extend the olive branch wherever and whenever we can. And today is a little bit of an unusual circumstance because I'm not extending the olive branch this time. The olive branch, I guess, is being extended my direction. And I have with me today a very, very special person to OBM, my friend Yash. Hello, Yash. How are you this evening?
Hello, ma'am. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
You had to call me ma'am on the podcast. That's
of course.
Great.
Always.
I've been asking him since the dawn of time to not call me ma'am, but he insists, ma'am exclusively, right? You're not a professor. You don't call me professor usually.
No, ma'am exclusively.
What? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm an adult. Thanks, production. This is a very tiny little mason jar glass of red wine because my friend Yash over here has a series of questions that he's hoping to ask me. And I'm very, very nervous, but this has been a long time coming. Yash and I have known each other. He was a student of mine at Conestoga College in the winter of 2023. Yes? Is that what we confirmed?
Winter of 2023.
And what class did I teach you?
Health Information Management.
That was the one. Yeah, HIM. That's the one that I kind of preach a lot of in almost all of my lectures. So if you've had me before, if you have ever learned anything from me, it's if it's not documented, it didn't happen. Anyways, let's cut to the chase. This doesn't need to be a 2-hour long episode, but I think we all know that I can go off the rails and talk a lot. So what kind of questions do you have prepared for me today, young man?
Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me here.
Yes.
And let's start it right away. Let's begin with you introducing yourself, who you are, what you like to do.
Oh.
And what do you like to do in your free time? What do you like to do when you're working? Things you like to do at work and things you don't like to do when you're at work.
This is a loaded question. Okay. I'm going to start with... I'll start with my personal life and then I'll lead into work because that's what most people who are listening to this podcast are really going to care about is, I think, more of my professional journey than my personal.
No, but everyone will get a hang of your professional journey only if they know
a
where you
little bit
are
about
coming
what
from
I do.
personally.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I can give you the Coles notes. I can give you the high level. So I live in Southwestern Ontario. I live in Cambridge, Ontario, in a small, I guess it's kind of like a village of Cambridge or like the downtown of Cambridge called Galt. And I've only been in this area for about 3 years. And prior to that, spent a ton of time in Toronto, like nearly a decade of my life in Toronto. So when people ask me like where my hometown is or like where I'm from, even though I grew up in a small town in Canada, like in Ontario, Toronto for me feels more like home than the small town that I grew up in. I guess, and you'll have to read my book to really understand all of the complexities of my childhood and sort of maybe why the city that I grew up in is not the place that I associate with being home. But with all of that being said, the reason why I associate Toronto with being home is because those years of my life were the years where I really discovered the things that I was really interested in and the things that I was really passionate about. So one of the things that I love more than anything is going to see live music shows, and I love going to baseball games. This wasn't something that I ever had the ability to do living in a small town in Ontario. Like when I grew up as a teenager, there was nothing to do. You drank until you were blackout drunk in cornfields, and you lied to your parents about where you were, and you had slumber, like you were having a sleepover with your friend, but everybody was lying to each other's parents about where you were, right? So there's nothing to do in the town that I grew up in. So when I finally had the opportunity to be in a really dynamic city and where I felt like I was amongst people that I related to and people who were as equally motivated and eager to have a professional, successful career. And there's just something about Toronto that really, I don't know, like I guess it ignited my drive to be doing better and I guess constantly sort of be pursuing the next thing. And I feel as if I had stayed in the small town, or if I had returned after, my university and college experience, if I had returned to my hometown, I don't think I would have had the incredible life and all of the incredible experiences and met all of the incredible people that I did. So all of that to be said, I love live music events. I love sporting events. I as unusual as this might sound, I have very particular eating habits when I am at home, but when I go out to restaurants, I like to try different food. I'm very what would you say, like boring in the food that I eat at home, very consistent, very boring, very like, I don't know. But then when we go out to restaurants, we would try like duck heart, or like we'll try the weird thing on the menu. So I really love trying new food from different cultures. And I mean, this is so cliche and stupid for me to say, but I also love to travel and I love experiencing other cultures and immersing myself in other cultures in a way that not a lot of people are comfortable with, in that I like to travel alone. I haven't traveled alone since I've been in a relationship, but prior to being in a relationship, I would travel alone a lot.
I would never travel alone.
No? Yeah. So I've traveled quite a bit alone and had some really just profound, experiences that were associated with that. So all of that makes me sound like I'm a very interesting person, but the reality is how I spend my day-to-day life is not interesting or fascinating at all. Like those things that I enjoy doing are a very, very small, portion of my life. How often do you travel in a year? I'm lucky if it's a couple of times. I do love going to cottage country in Ontario. Like if you ever get the chance to go to like Muskoka or Huntsville, like the cottages and the scenery, that's Canada to me. Like that's the epitome of Ontario, what, living in Ontario has to offer in the summer. Like those are those areas. So I love doing that in the summer as well. But going back to me being a very boring person, I have been, and I say this a lot, but I've been the textbook definition of a workaholic since I was young. I started working in a long-term care home when I was 14, because my mom actually was an administrator in the long-term care home. So nepotism all day. Yep, I admit it, and you know all about nepotism, Yash. So we're two peas in a pod here. I pretty well had my career sort of it wasn't obvious to me, but I had my career kind of laid out for me relatively early, because even in the 9th grade, we had something in high school called Take Your Child to Work Day. And, you know, how old are you in grade 9, 13 or 14? So I went to work with my mom in her administrator job in the long-term care home as a teenager. And then the day that I turned 14, I could start working in the long-term care home. So I wasn't a teenager who worked at McDonald's or who worked in a shopping mall. Like, my first job was taking care of elderly people who had cognitive impairments and physical disabilities, who were wheelchair bound and all kinds of, you know, disabilities and impairments. And that's what I started doing as a young teenager. And by the time I was 18, I was working in 4 different departments in the nursing home. So I worked in the housekeeping department, the dietary department, the laundry department, and I worked as a PSW, but they actually trained me in-house. I didn't go and get a PSW certificate. Nepotism. They trained me in-house to be a part of that nursing team, but my role was called a healthcare aide, or HCA. So we got paid less than the PSWs did, but I was still at 18 making like
a good
way better money than any of my friends who were working at like Suzy Shear in the mall and like McDonald's, you know. But it wasn't obvious to me at that time. Like, when I was working in the nursing home, it wasn't obvious to me at that time that that was going to be what I did as my career, because at that time in my life, I thought that I was going to either be a journalist or like a writer, or I think there was a part of me that maybe thought I would be a teacher. Anyways, actually,
which you are.
Well, I am a teacher now, yeah, which happened so naturally and organically, and you know, I'm sure that will come up in one of your questions. But yeah, I wanted to do something creative, and I wanted to do something different. And I think there was a part of me. I actually went into my undergraduate degree as an English literature major. And I was going to do a creative writing thing. Anyways, after the first semester, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to read. I think I still have my textbook from my early British literature class, because I said I was never going to get rid of it because it haunted my dreams. Like, the paper was Bible thin paper. You know how like that tissue paper textbook? Oh my gosh. Anyways, so after that first semester, I went home for Christmas break, and I went to work at the nursing home because it was Christmas break. So I picked up shifts, and I ended up having a conversation with the director of care in the break room, actually. And she was like, how's school going? And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't think this is for me. And she was like, Shannon, like, why are you not doing something in healthcare? Like, why are you not going to school to be a nurse? Like, this comes so naturally to you, and you're so good with the residents, and the families love you, and you grew up, you know, in this place. Like, why aren't you doing that? And so that was the whole kind of turning point, where going the route of being a registered clinician came into play. And so I switched my major to psychology, and I did some gerontology training, and I did some women's studies and women's health training. And then I always knew that I wanted to be in Toronto. So as soon as, I don't think I mentioned this, but I did my undergrad in Windsor and lived there for 5 years while I did that. And then I always knew that I wanted to be in Toronto. And I guess the reality is I had a really dynamic opportunity at a very young age to have my sort of options opened up for me. And now today I've worked in healthcare for 23 and a half years. And so my life still revolves around healthcare because it's a part of my soul now. Like, it's just a part of who I am. And I feel so natural and so comfortable in a healthcare environment. So there was a time, and I do not say this braggingly, or I say this in a way where I want to say, do as I say, not as I do. Because there was a time where I was working at 4 different hospitals and pulling double shifts, and then going and teaching, after working nights and then lecturing for 4 hours and then sleeping, like doing really unhealthy, like just not healthy things. But my career has always been so important to me. So when you ask me, like, what do you do in your free time, or what, how do you spend your time? It's like a running joke for a very large portion of time in my 20s from my friends was Shannon doesn't have a boyfriend. Her jobs are her boyfriend. Like, I was so committed to my career, and I was so committed to climbing, the corporate ladder. And
that's a good thing, though.
I mean, in hindsight, I'm really happy
It
that
got you where you are right now.
And I guess here we are, and how lucky are we to be here where we are. So I'm not the most interesting person in my day to day, and that I'm not like skydiving and stuff, but I am very secure in where I am, and I feel very blessed to have had the opportunities that I have had. And I think one of the things that means so much to me is that now I'm in a position I'm not that old. I'm in a position at a relatively still young age that I can now help young people and still be somewhat relatable, so that young people can maybe feel like I am a person that they can come to for support. So that's, I guess, kind of what's brought me here. Is I was very lucky at 14 to start working in healthcare, and now 23 and a half years later, I'm mentoring people who are
still working in healthcare.
And still working in healthcare. Yeah.
So thank you for keeping it brief. That was very brief.
That was so brief. Yeah. Like, I gave you the Coles notes.
That was the shortest answer.
Yeah, I know. You know that I go off on these tangents. Just stop me. What's the next question, Yash?
So other than your ties with nepotism, like, what made you feel like you should work in a healthcare facility? Like, other than your mother working as an administrator, did anything call you, or it was just an opportunity that you grabbed?
This is a little bit of a paradox, I think, because ever since I was a child, I've been a very caring and empathetic and like compassionate and sensitive person, and that I love taking care of things. Like pets growing up, like, your cat or your dog, like these were my babies. And like, I loved taking care of people. I love taking care of people and pets and my babies as a child, my toys. But very early on in my life, I started to come to the realization that I didn't think I wanted my own children for a lot of reasons, not just, the state of humanity and society alone, but for biological reasons and for reasons that I really thought long and hard about. Just made a very conscious decision that I didn't ever think that I wanted to have my own biological children. And I continued to love taking care of people. And I guess because I was that way, a lot of my parents' friends would ask me to babysit their kids. And so, before I knew it, I had a lot of babysitting gigs. So I was always taking care of people. I was always taking care of my own siblings. I'm the oldest of 4. Between myself and the youngest, there's 14 years. And I mean, my family dynamic looks very different today, but this is just what it looked like when I was growing up. And so to have such a vast age difference between your siblings that you live with, I held my little sister, when the day she was born, I sang "You Are My Sunshine" to her when she was crying, so that's the age difference that there was. So caring for people and that empathy and helping people solve their problems, I think that's just something that has always given me a tremendous amount of satisfaction. And I don't know, I think I've just always been a really sensitive, bleeding heart. I always look for the underdog. I'm always, in high school, I was friends with everyone. Like, there wasn't any friend group that I didn't, get
There
along
were no
with.
people you didn't know.
There's no people I didn't know. And like, even the people who were shy and quiet or the weirdos or whatever, like I made every effort to at least acknowledge their existence and, you know, maybe not make them feel special, but at least make them feel like they weren't invisible. So yeah, I think healthcare, again, it wasn't always the obvious thing for me, but once I, you know, had somebody sort of point out to me that I had this ability that maybe I just wasn't tapping into because it just came so natural to me. I didn't think that I was skilled at it or something, or that it would be something I could do as a job. So I don't know. I think, yes, nepotism definitely had a lot to do with it because it put me in the right place at the right time with the right people who saw something in me and
It gave you a direction.
and gave me direction. Yeah, definitely. Another short answer.
No, that's all right. So, but with all of this emotional and spiritual aspect of your picking healthcare, was there ever a thought that this career would be more financially stable and
Definitely.
you'll always have more room to grow? Like wherever you go, you can grow more. Like, was that ever a thought when you started, or it just kept happening when you went along?
The financial piece definitely was abundantly clear to me because and I mean, I'm sure this is in every culture, but especially in Canadian culture, there's like a pecking order to careers, right? Like you work in law, you work in government, you work in healthcare, or you work in education, or you work in the trades, right? And so it's like, well, I wasn't going to work in the trades. I never would have made it through law school. Like there's just no way. I never would have. I think I probably am smart enough to be a doctor, but I'm just not academically just like trained enough because my brain is way too hyperactive to study the way doctors need to study. But yeah, it just became very apparent to me that it was either nursing or social work. And full transparency, social work just seemed like the way for me to go, a little bit of an easier way to go because I already had, you know, so much experience that I could bring into a practicum or I could bring into the classroom even. And so I took the social work route because I knew that I could be registered with a professional college. And I knew that the second you get registered with a professional college, you get into the hospital. And I knew that the hospitals and the healthcare system have the best pension plans. And all of this was communicated to me by my mom, who worked in healthcare, who knew all of this stuff. So as soon as it was like, oh, Shannon's going to transition from long-term care to hospital, it was like, whoa, like Shannon's made it now. And then forget, you know, the fact that I moved to Toronto and I ended up working at one of the like world-renowned hospitals on the planet, Toronto General. Yeah.
And at what age did you realize that?
At what age? About the financial piece?
Yeah, about the financial piece.
I would say probably around 23, 24.
So way after you started.
Yeah, way after I started.
What motivated you to do all that work from, I guess, 13 or 14 to 23? That's like 10 years of your career phase. Like, if money was not the motivation, you can't just go on philosophical thoughts. Like, what made you keep working?
I think there was a part of me that felt like I was privileged to be doing what I was doing and not schlepping it away like my friends were in these other part-time jobs. Like I was making easily at the time. Okay, so when I got my job at 14 years old as the laundry student in the long-term care home, I was making $7 an hour. And that was like $3 more an hour than minimum wage. So my friends who are working at McDonald's were making whatever they were making. And it was like, I was making $7 an hour. And that was like rich flex, right? Mm-hmm. So I learned very quickly that if you work in healthcare, you're going to make, more money.
More money.
And so so I started as a laundry student. So then you get talking to the women in the laundry and I'm like, okay, I'm making $7 an hour. how much are you making? Oh, I'm making $19 an hour. And I'm like, you're making $19 an hour to work in laundry? So I think there was maybe an unconscious, but again, because I didn't ever have to try to get a job anywhere else, the money for me was more so like, I want to move to that position in the union so that I can be making that amount of money. But did I certainly pause and think like, I should go and work somewhere else? Like I should go and be a waitress at a restaurant because they make really good money in tips in Toronto. Like you can make killer money if you work as a bartender or whatever. But I'm believe it or not, people don't believe this, but I am kind of shy. Like I get social anxiety and I do identify as an introvert. So putting myself out there in that kind of an environment as being a server to me, having to be on as a server all the time just sounded horrible to me. And I felt, again, like healthcare was a safe space for me. So I don't think it was the money. I think that's where I felt the most comfortable and the most safe. Wasn't until I moved to Toronto where the money really started to become a motivator. And that's when I discovered that you can't stay at the same organization for too long because the probability of you being promoted is much less because they have or the probability of you getting a raise is much less because organizations have a greater budget for hiring than they do for raises and promotions. So I very quickly learned if you stay in the same place, you're not going to move up the corporate ladder. But if you stay in a place for 2 years and then you apply to another place, then you're automatically going to move to the higher tier, to the next pay grade. So I have been in acute care, like in the hospital system, since 2012. And I made it to the clinical director salary or whatever. But I hope I can be very clear and say that I wasn't happy then. Like, even though I had made it to that, I always refer to it as like, if you ever play Mario, like making it to the final Bowser level, like the final Bowser level to me was like, I'm going to be a clinical director and I'm going to be making this amount of money and everything's going to be amazing. And I did it. I did it in like 10 years and it was fine. But all the money in the world, if it's not the right thing for you to be doing, or the time has come for you to move on and do something different, then I think it was a really hard thing for me to, I don't know why I'm going on a rampage about this now, but it was a really hard thing for me to acknowledge last year that I had worked all of these years to get to this level and I still kind of felt like there was something missing. So it was never about the money. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. So I know this is going a bit off track now, but at the time when you realize that you have got everything that you wanted, like you wanted to be a clinical director.
That was my goal. I think I was like, I could be a VP. Like, I don't know what I was.
When you reached that position, like you had everything you wanted, was that the time when
other things were happening in my life?
Like, was that the time your female motherly instinct was kicking in and like...
What, that I wanted to have children maybe?
It's not always about children. It's just...
Oh, but maybe that I wanted to take care of people in a different way or something.
Yeah,
is that what you're alluding to?
It's not like... I'm not saying I know feminism and everything. I am completely in support. I'm not against it. But there are different things in both the sexes. Like, at a certain age, a woman tends to think about her personal life more than her career. So if you have read about these things, then it's not like this is how it is every time. But most of the times, women who are successful in their careers lack in their personal life. The women who are very good at their personal lives lack in their careers. So
you're going to make me cry.
So when you got to the clinical director position, what happened? What was what kicked in that you felt that this is something I wanted to achieve, but now that I have it, I'm not happy about? Why would you think that, if that's what got you started?
These are really, you definitely are hitting a sensitive spot. I didn't realize that I would feel so sensitive about that, but I don't know if I would say that it was like, how do I say this without like totally saying what I'm trying to say? There were a lot of things happening in my life at the time when I got this clinical director position. And not only were they, things that were happening in my personal life, but there were things that were happening in my family life. And I started a relationship, like my first adult relationship ever in my life. Now, I dated someone in my early 20s. We were off and on for like 4 years. But as you say, women who are usually successful professionally, they struggle in their personal lives. And I did in every aspect of my personal life. Like the dating scene, especially the dating scene in Toronto, and of course, juggling the jobs that I did. And I had an incredibly good friend group. And I think just the idea of, having a husband and, settling down and buying a home, none of that meant anything to me in my 20s at all. All I cared about was my career and my friends and having a good time and, where was I going to be traveling to next? That was all I cared about from probably 24 to 30. My dad died when I was 30, and that turned my world upside down for the first, there were a few life-altering circumstances after my dad died too, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't prioritize, any of that maternal or whatever it was. The only place that I did was in caring for patients. I didn't, even nurture myself necessarily in those years. So yeah, when the shit hit the fan in my family life and in my personal life last year, and in my physical health was horrible last year. My mental health was horrible last year. I was diagnosed neurodivergent last year. I started taking medication every day for the first time in my life last year. So when all of those things happen, I think for me anyway, it was maybe a wake-up call or I don't know, just a reality check that I didn't want to spend another second of my life doing something that I didn't feel was good, or that I wanted to just be giving positivity and every ounce of generosity and compassion and empathy that I felt I could muster. I just wanted to put that out into the world, I guess. I don't know. So maybe it is a maternal thing.
So with all of this going on, how did you decide to start helping out international students and people like me?
I'm going to have to start figuring out a different way to tell these stories because I think they're going to start sounding repetitive, but I describe it in the way that Einstein's definition of insanity is. And I felt like every semester I was going into this new cohort of these, fresh faces or Zoom screens in some cases. And I was hoping that each semester I would experience, something different. But I started to realize that every 4 months I had this incredible group of people come in who had these incredible, lives, who took this enormous risk to come to Canada. And I was hearing these horror stories about experiences that they were going through. And it got to the point where I couldn't even listen to it on the news because yeah, it was so heartbreaking for me. You want to ask a talking point from the talking box?
Sure.
Or do you have a question there that you want to ask? You say that I've already answered half of your questions. He's got a whole page here, by the way. Like, he hand wrote. Did you take this piece of paper from a printer and hand write these with a pen?
Yes.
I'm so proud of you.
Can you see my handwriting?
Yeah, you have impeccable handwriting. For a doctor, I'm impressed. Not chicken scratch here at all. A++. Well done. When did you start learning your penmanship? In like primary school?
The what?
Your penmanship, like the way.
No, they don't teach us that in India.
Excuse me?
It's just you just have to know how to write.
Shut the front door.
Yeah, like there is no.
They don't teach you cursive writing?
There are no special classes for it. Like
I am mind-boggling right now.
there are special classes for it after school. Like you have to
you
pay
have
more
to go,
for those classes. You have to go out of your way to learn how to write neatly.
Oh,
They
how
just
to write.
teach you how to write. A, B, C, D. That's all they teach you.
They don't teach you like
How to write.
Yeah, we had like cursive writing with like the pages had the lines and you had to do all of the flow of your letters to the cursive writing lines. Wow, this is.
They just taught us how to write A, B, C, D, and.
I haven't answered all of these questions. There's still several there that I haven't answered.
Which ones?
Okay, I'll read them. So there's one here that says, my motivation to keep moving forward and doing what I'm doing. Well, this, like right here, is my motivation because this started over a year ago and it's turned into something I could never in my wildest dreams have possibly imagined. And I think that it's only just going to keep getting better. And so I think my motivation to keep moving forward is that for the first time, I think, in my career, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be and I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I still have a little bit of the hospital with working casually and I'm teaching and really enjoying that. And I'm getting to finally scratch that like creative itch that I have, had ever since I was a teenager. So this just feels right. And I think that's why I keep moving forward. One important lesson that you have learned throughout your career, which you would like to share. One important lesson. I've learned a lot of lessons in my career. And I want to say probably the biggest lesson or the biggest piece of advice that I would tell to people is your boss and your boss's boss and your boss's boss's boss and the CEO, they are all people and they are all people who also don't know what they're doing. We're all just trying to figure it out. And sure, we have and we develop the skills and the knowledge over time through experience and exposure. But like most of the time, we are all just putting out what we think is the best information or the best, process based off of the resources that we have available to us and hoping for the best. Like, don't ever feel like you are not capable of doing something or that person is smarter than you or better than you, because that person has doubts and insecurities and flaws and inconsistencies. And many, many people who are in leadership should not be in leadership. And I use this quote a lot too. It's a Simon Sinek quote. He says, everybody can be a leader, but not everybody should be a leader. And the same, in my opinion, goes for parenting. Everybody can be a parent, but not everybody should be a parent. So my biggest word of advice is to just remember that we are all human. We are all just doing the best that we can, and nobody knows what the hell they're doing. We're all just along for this crazy ride on this planet spinning in the middle of the universe.
So a little bit in depth about this. You have been working for a very long time now, 23 years. So you have also worked before the time where there was workplace
When there
satisfaction.
were dinosaurs roaming the streets.
Yeah. Like
Saber-toothed tigers.
like workplace satisfaction, and there are many new things that popped up, I think, after COVID.
Oh my goodness, the workforce has changed
A lot
so
after
much.
COVID.
So much the workforce has changed since COVID. And I don't know if I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think that specifically in healthcare, because I can't speak to any other workforce except for education, I guess, but everybody is so burnt out and jaded post-pandemic that they just don't want to be bullied and treated poorly at work anymore. Like, I think a lot of people's cup is overflowing. Like, you can only be resilient in your career for so long. You can only put up with so much bullshit for so long. And I think a lot of, professionals have gotten to that point where they're just kind of fed up. And I don't know. I feel for those people. I feel for those people. And the unfortunate thing is when you get a job in a hospital and you start making the money and you've got the benefits and you've got your pension collecting, we refer to it as the golden handcuffs. Like you're handcuffed to this career, because if you quit, it's like you're blowing up your life. It's like what do you mean you're giving up a permanent full-time salary, job for whatever it is, chasing your dreams or whatever. So I don't know.
So when you talk about what you said right now, people are burnt out, they just don't want to be bullied anymore. Let's say this about the people who have already been working and know how things work around and have seen the transition from a strict workplace culture to a all-inclusive, over-friendly workplace culture. So post-pandemic, with the all-inclusive, we are all friends, all, take your time, work around. Where does discipline go in all of this?
Yeah, that is something that there are some incredibly skilled, brilliant, phenomenal clinician. Like, I have worked with some of the most talented clinicians and physicians and surgeons in Canada. Like, when you work at UHN, you're surrounded by very skilled, professionals. But I think there is how do I put this? I think that human resources has gone so far in the direction where there's this idea of employee wellness, but they preach it, yet it's this like unspoken rule that you still work 12-hour days every day, even though you only get paid for 8, and you still have your phone on you at all times, and you sell your soul to the organization, and you commit to the organization. Like, there's this weird culture where it's like, we believe in mental health and we want you to be mentally healthy, and yes, corporate culture, and yeah, we kumbaya, pizza party, like, sure, but that in a lot of ways to me feels very phony. And I think there is still this kind of underlying notion of the expectation that discipline still be there. But then if you turn around and say, I'm feeling this way, well, no, our policy says employee wellness and rah, rah, rah. But then if you call in sick, you face shame from your team for calling in sick. Am I making sense with what I'm saying? Like, there is this air of like, we're all friends and kumbaya, but then there's also this like culture in healthcare where there's an expectation that you show up and you perform the way you do, and you'll get left in the dust if you don't keep up. Like, nurses especially, have you ever heard of the concept in nursing where senior nurses, they'll say they eat their young? Like, senior nurses is like, they eat their young, and that there's like a really high expectation on the younger clinicians as they move in, is like senior nurses will be awful to you. And the expectation is that you show up and you do what you're asked to do. And if not, like, you won't make it here. It's very, very real.
I don't get what's wrong with that.
I'm very excited for you to experience it at because they are very, very corporate, very corporate. It's like this is the mothership. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I should mention where you work. We can probably bleep that out. But like, you're going to be working at a corporation that very heavy on policy, like very corporate. I think you'll be very happy there. If you can see past the phony baloney leaders, because that's hard.
I don't want to see past.
You don't want to see past.
I'm okay with this kind of workplace. Like, as we were speaking before we started this, when you were telling me that if your employer is not responding to you in time, then you can call him out and say that, I don't like the way you talk. But that's how he talks. You are here for a job. Do your job.
So you don't have that, like, perspective
Exactly.
that there should be so much leniency and I don't know what the word is, like hand holding or whatever. Like, you think that it should be, this is your job, you do your job.
There are two things. First thing, with someone of your experience, you can do it.
I'm not very good at that though.
But you can do it. You should do it. You should always call people out with the amount of time you have been working in the industry. But someone who is just starting, I won't. And people like me who are just starting shouldn't.
So you're encouraging me to flex my seniority, or like flex my experience and be more authoritative because I have the experience.
Because you have earned it. You learned it. You earned it. You made it through.
That's
everything.
So weird for me. I don't feel like I've earned anything.
But
I've just lived.
You went through all of this.
Yeah.
You went through all of this. It's not like you skipped all of this and then got here and now you can tell your employer that you are not responding to me in time, so bye. Mm-hmm. You went through all of this for you to see this today. Mm-hmm. I think if I don't go through all of this today and I start talking like you can talk, I won't have the value of what I'm getting. Once I get to where you are, I won't sound like I'm asking for something more. I will sound more like I'm being rude.
Yeah, maybe they would refer to it as like a
long, like what you are doing right now, what we spoke about before we started this, for people of your experience, it's a perfectly normal, like that is how you should go on with your work life. Mm-hmm. But people who are just beginning their career, if we don't go through all of this,
it's like you have to go through these rites of passage before you get to, I don't know how
and then the senior nurses burning out the younger, like the junior nurses, they went through the same burnout.
Yeah. It's in high school they made this, I don't know if you would call it illegal, but like in high school we would have something called hazing rituals, where it was like the seniors would pull pranks on the juniors and you would have to like push pennies down the hallway with your nose, and like hazing rituals. When I was in high school, they banned hazing rituals, but it was something that every year was all part of like orientation, and it was like the seniors, poked fun at the juniors, but then whatever happened in society, and when did I get into high school? It was like early 2000s. Whatever was happening in society at that time, that was when the participation generation, it was like everybody gets an award and everybody's a winner, and we can't do hazing rituals anymore because that's bullying, and the narrative in school changed. And then I'm sure it was at that time when we started to see the narrative in the workforce start to change about like how bullying in the workplace. But it's it's gotten to the point now where I think organizations are, I don't know. I think organizations are so deep in the weeds, just operationally, and our healthcare system is bust. And I just think every leader that I know is literally just trying to get through the day and to try to be an effective leader and to be the leader that you want to be. Like, there's so much bullshit that you have to wade through that you can't even sometimes be the leader that you want to be because you're putting out so many bullshit fires all day and whatever. Like, I think that was the thing that I struggled with the most, is even when I made it to the clinical director level, I still didn't have the authority or the ability to fix things. There was still so much that was broken and awful about our system, and, you know, having to lay off nurses, and like, it was just awful to me, like awful. Anyways, go back to your questions here. My long answers. Perspective. How have my experience shaped my perspective with what I'm doing now with OBM? I'll say something very quickly. So I already alluded to this, but I was very fortunate in that my adoptive mom set me up with my career at a very early age. And so I think because I've been so privileged in my career, observing people who haven't been so lucky or who have come to Canada with the hopes that they would be able to continue on with their professional career, much like yourself, the fact that I was starting to learn that there were so many people who weren't having the same experience that I was, I found myself saying, what do you mean? It's so easy. Like, what are you talking about? And it's not easy. Like, my experience is an anomaly, I think. So that's why it's so important for me to move forward with OBM, is because for every one of me, there's 500 people who are struggling, and I want to help all 500 plus times a million. Do you expect or envision my legacy? Do I expect or envision my legacy? I do think at one point I said to Ryan, I feel like I could die today and it would be great because OBM would be left in my memory and it would live on, and my life insurance would be donated to OBM or something crazy. And then you guys would finally be able to get the office space you deserve, and it would be great. So,
and how would you like OBM to be working after?
What do I envision OBM to be when I retire or when I die?
When you retire.
when my legacy is established. Mm-hmm. I don't want to speak it out loud because I don't want to jinx it. Can I keep that secret?
Yeah.
I want to keep it secret.
No problem.
I have big goals. Big goals. We have big goals.
That's good.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you talk about? Oh my gosh. I don't know. Any historical figure. Let me think. This is a really good one. I do really like old school everything. Like, I love living in an old home, and I like World War I and World War II stuff. Like, I love historical stuff.
You just don't like the old school workplace culture.
I don't like the old school workplace culture. No, that's where you and I kind of see a little bit different on this, like, everything being so red tape around everything. Like, for me, it's like, if I see the solution to something, I don't want to have to deal with a policy or whatever preventing me from being able to fix that problem. Like, there's just so much flaming hoops of fire you have to jump through to get anything accomplished. Mm-hmm. That's what I hate about bureaucracy. It's not the brilliant people that you get the opportunity to collaborate with, and sometimes the not so brilliant people. It's
difficult to work around.
Difficult to work around the red tape of everything, and I hate that. Historical figure. Historical figure. Who would I go for dinner with? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe
pick something world, not Canada.
Worldly. Are they dead? Do they have to be dead?
Pick something that you think I'll know. Someone. So just like not.
I'm so old. I'm going to say any name and you're going to be like, I don't know who that is. No, I think it would probably be...
I'll give you a figure.
Yes, tell me.
Hitler.
What? Oh my God. The only reason why I laughed at that, I'm not laughing at Hitler. Please don't cancel me for laughing at Hitler. The reason why I laugh at that is because Syed and I had our meeting and we were talking about places that we were curious to go. And I said that I wanted to go to Auschwitz. I said that I wanted to go to the Jewish concentration camp. And now you're sitting here across from me telling me that I need to go to dinner with Hitler. What is happening? I don't want to go to dinner with Hitler, although I would have some pretty poignant questions probably to ask him.
You are already on a dinner with Hitler.
No, I'm not already at a dinner with Hitler. Oh my gosh.
Now what?
I'm already on a dinner with Hitler. Mm-hmm. What do I ask him? Mm-hmm. Holy doodle. Why? Probably? Like, why? That would be the biggest question. Why everything?
Very personal.
I'm sure. And
very personal.
Probably
he'll cancel you.
He'll cancel.
Like you'll be in there in the next batch.
I will just ask him what he's going to order from the menu, and we'll have a conversation about how good the capsov is, and I'll ask him if his steak was cooked well, and I'll ask him how his mom is doing, and I'll ask him if he plans on going away on holiday next summer, and I'll ask him how the renovations on his deck are going. That's what I'll talk to Hitler about. I don't give a fuck about his personal vendetta against anybody that's not him.
Okay.
I would just talk to him like a human, I guess. And I feel very bad for him because whatever happened to him to make him feel like he needed to do that, I don't know. If you could change any historical event, which would it be and why? Anything.
Let's talk about healthcare.
Any historical event in healthcare, which would it be and why? The pandemic, obviously. Like, that's an obvious one, of course.
No, I mean like a planned event.
What do you mean, like a planned event?
So in India, there was a time called emergency.
Tell me about that.
That was a planned event.
I'm just trying to think like what's happened in healthcare that...
Did anything like that happen in Canada? Like, it doesn't have to be something bad.
There's nothing I can think of that's happened in Canada that impacted the population in any way.
Like a big reform and
Never. Nothing like that. Ever. Has there ever? Ryan, am I lying? The only like vaccines, like mandate, but that's not it. No, we've never had anything like that. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Maybe it's going to head that direction. I don't know. With Trump becoming president, that's going to be. We're going to get prepared for some freaky times. Which experiences in the industry and personal life inspired you to help? Already talked about that. I see myself doing this for a while, and I'm really excited about the future for that. According to you, what are some of the biggest challenges that international students face when trying to find jobs in the field? I think there are 3 that are the most obvious to me. The first one is that this Canadian experience thing is baloney. Like, you need to have Canadian experience to get a job. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know what the definition of Canadian experience means because it's not a standardized definition of you need Canadian experience, right? It's just like, well, you don't have enough Canadian experience, but like, on what benchmark here? Like, I don't know. That frustrates me to no end. And then the second one, I think, is the whole job application process and the resume and cover letter. I think many people, when they come here, they don't realize how convoluted and complex and, quite frankly, tedious and annoying the application process is, because even though you update your resume and your cover letter, you still have to go in and fill in all the blank spots. Like, you're spending hours of your time applying for jobs, hundreds of jobs in some cases, and not even getting a call for an interview. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another one. And then the one that I personally feel is the most important, I think, is that there's a lack of confidence, and I think there's also a little bit of imposter syndrome too. Like, you get here, you did everything necessary to get here, but now you're here, and because you've applied for 150 jobs and you haven't heard back, your ego gets hit every time and your confidence diminishes and diminishes. And then, much like when I met you last year, there was a hopelessness about you. There was an air of, what am I doing? Like, I made a big mistake, right? Am I safe in saying that? Like,
yeah, that was it.
Yeah, you were feeling like you had left this comfortable life that you had back home to come here to try to make something of yourself in a different country.
And nothing was working.
And, also correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably safe to assume that that was the first time in your life that you'd really struggled.
Yes.
Because of your upbringing, a lot of your opportunities were spoon-fed to you.
Yes.
In a way,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
I would love to talk to you more about that, but I know we're already like 100 hours into this. How does OBM aim to address these issues? Well, I am attempting, I guess, to solve all of the world's problems with OBM, but the most important, I think, to me would be the mentorship matching programming, which I want to mirror very similarly to Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Canada, where it's like we have a pool of mentors. And then we have young professionals and emerging leaders who have to apply to be a part of the program, and then we'll match them with executives and mentors. And I'm really feeling as though that opportunity to connect with somebody will increase your confidence, and it will create those opportunities to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. And hopefully your mentor would be able to introduce you to people within their network and, create organic opportunities and experiences where you can be amongst professionals and, build that, again, just going back to confidence around your ability to naturally interact and communicate. And those interpersonal skills, I think, are really important. And I think a mentor, while they do have your professional interest at heart, I think a mentor also cares about you as a person and cares about your interpersonal well-being just as much as your professional. So the mentorship program, I think, will address that. And then to piggyback off of that, we're also going to have a peer-to-peer mental health support program, which is kind of birthed from your capstone project, from the program that you graduated from. And I think between the two of those combined, supporting people who are in crisis or supporting people who are really struggling and, helping them get on their feet or helping them see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then maybe even being able to match them with a mentor to have, somebody take them under their wing and be that support system that they need in a time that they're really struggling and feeling hopeless. I hope that between those two programs, we'll be able to address people's interpersonal and professional needs, while simultaneously having OBM also be a modern and creative outlet for people. I think like podcasting, of course, is not new by any stretch of the imagination, but it's almost like if you don't have a podcast, what are you doing at this point? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I'm happy to be getting on this bandwagon, whether albeit late or what have you. I'm happy to be jumping on this bandwagon now. And I'm really excited to just learn more about how technology and how we can be leveraging social media to reach as many possible human people as we can to get other people kind of on board with what OBM is all about. And
about this,
yeah.
How responsible do you think you are, like you would be for your mentees?
How responsible do I think I would be for my mentees?
And where do you think your responsibility will end for them? Like, when will you know that you have done everything you can and now it's...
That's a good question, because I think the thing that I'm sort of observing is, I'll get messages from people and they'll say, hey, can you help me get a job? And, I don't usually respond to those messages, by the way. Like, it's very unlikely that you're going to get a response if just because I get so many messages, it's not, anyways, I get so many messages. So if I get a message from somebody who says, can you get me a job? Or, hey, most likely that I probably won't apply to that, because in my mind, if I'm going to mentor someone, I want to know that that person is taking their experience and their time and my experience and my time seriously. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. Time is very precious. It's one of the most precious things we have. And as you've already alluded to, I guess I get to kind of flex my experience, and I get to say, like, if you want me as a mentor, then you have to come to me with very clearly defined goals, and let's establish a timeline for how we're going to accomplish those goals. Let's tackle this in a methodical way, so that if you want to have a job in a hospital in 3 months, you're going to have a job in a hospital in 3 months, or you're at least going to be in the competitive ring where that possibility could happen for you, you know, in a reasonable amount of time. So where does my responsibility lie with my mentees? I don't think that it is my responsibility at all. I think that if a mentee really wants to work with a mentor, the responsibility lies within them to say, I've learned everything that I can from you. Or,
well, I think you think it is your responsibility.
What do you mean?
You give a notion that everyone is your responsibility.
Oh, yes. But that's just a problem that I have.
So then in the programs, like, you can cut this off.
Well, I won't be the mentor for everyone, right? Like, I do not plan on taking a cohort, every cohort. Like,
whoever your mentees are, after you have done your part, like, whether you help them or you didn't help them, where do you think you'll detach yourself emotionally from the
I don't think
situation?
I will ever detach myself emotionally from them. I think especially if I've helped them and, you know, and I had like a meaningful connection with them and, you know, that sort of like friendship
Not
or whatever.
with the person.
Like,
not with the person.
What do you mean?
With the situation, like.
With the entire concept of OBM mentorship?
No, not the entire concept. Like, you are mentoring a mentee and you help them land a job, good for everyone. But the time is over, like, you have done everything you can and now it's their time to do something.
Mm-hmm.
At that time when you have done everything and now it's their turn, where do you think you will emotionally detach yourself from that responsibility?
I know what you mean. So I'm going to use the example of a mentor that I had, Leslie, who's actually going to be on the podcast. She supported me in those first like foundational years of me getting into acute care. And when I was ready to I was ready to apply and try something a little bit different. She helped me and prepared me for that. But then when I got to a certain point in my career where I had kind of surpassed her, it didn't, like, I would still go to her every once in a while and she would come and actually be a guest lecturer in some of my classes. Leslie was the best mother on the face of the planet. She devoted her life to her children came first. Her career was second. And that was very clear. Like, her shift was done. Like, she worked 8 to 4, but she left at 4 because she had school bus pickup or whatever. Like, but one of the most incredible mentors that I ever could have had, because she just had the best advice and I just felt like I could go to her for anything. But I think when the mentorship just didn't make sense anymore, there was a natural sort of pull because I needed a different type of mentorship. I needed somebody who was more in alignment with what I was doing, and Leslie and my alignment just didn't match up anymore. I was doing something more administrative where she was still clinical, right? Now, because Leslie was my mentor and she was so, you know, pivotal as a part of my career, I could literally pick up the phone right now and call her. And I imagine that if she didn't pick up, she would at least text me and say, like, I'm whatever. Like, my relationship with Leslie, I truly feel that when I connect with her again, we're going for lunch actually next next Friday, and I haven't seen her probably in 6 years. And I strongly feel that it'll just be like we picked up right where we left off. So I hope anybody who I ever mentor or have ever mentored, I hope that they know or that they understand, even if I'm not at your beck and call and editing every one of your resumes and coaching you before that interview you go to, I hope that if you ever feel like you need somebody to talk to, or you found yourself in a professional or even in a personal blunder and you felt like you needed just somebody you could trust, I would hope that anybody I've mentored would come to me if they needed it. Mm-hmm. So I think these things kind of end naturally and organically. I don't think there needs to be a severance of anything. I think both of you will just know when that time will naturally come to an end. Or not an end, but just a pause. It'll just come,
the commitment is over now.
Yeah.
Now we just have a personal
now it's just
relationship with each
you
other.
wish them nothing but the best, and you celebrate their accomplishments when you see them on social media, and you reconnect and go for lunch every couple of years, and when they have kids and get married, you send them a gift card, like whatever, right?
Yeah.
So but because I am so emotionally invested and so attached to OBM, I think there will certainly be a part of me that feels like every single mentee who moves through the cohort, whether I'm their mentor or some other executive is their mentor, I feel like every single person who ever goes through this experience or whoever even is involved in OBM in any capacity, I will feel like there's a teeny tiny little part of me that's like contributed to that for them. And I think I do kind of feel a sense of ownership and just wanting to make sure that anybody who is involved with OBM sees it as a positive thing and something that's contributed to their life in a positive way and helped them in a positive way. And that I can say that that's because of me.
Do you think this will be a problem when you grow?
A problem when I grow?
Like when the community grows, like when OBM is a big thing?
When I won't be able to have that same interpersonal like touch with every single person?
That's what you think. You won't be able to have them.
Well, there just won't be enough time in the day or like whatever. I just won't be able to spend one-on-one time with every single person. I think I will struggle with that. But I will, of course, protect space to be able to do it with the select people that I'll have the capacity to be able to do it with.
Like, all I'm trying to ask is how will you keep this and your personal life separate when...
I don't think there will be. I don't think there will be a division. I think that OBM, obviously, like I will take vacation and I will, whatever. But I think that my career is my career has been so much of who I am. I have obviously a newfound accountability to myself to prioritize the things that make me happy and to surround myself with the things and the people that make me happy. So I just want to make sure that I never resent this process. And if there's ever a time or a point where I feel like I'm starting to resent it, I think that will be an indication to me that I need to take a beat, step away for a bit, and then, let somebody else do things for a little bit and then maybe come back into it. I don't know. I hope that it never gets to that point. I hope that I always
I don't think you'll ever resent it. You will just be, at a point, you will be exhausted.
Really? But they say that if you're doing what you love, that it'll feel like you never work a day in your life.
So when
you won't be exhausted.
So like think about it, when you're talking about 10 people, you won't be exhausted. When you're talking about 110, you are going to be
that'll be exhausting, but only because 110 people to me sounds like a nightmare. Like 10 people to me sounds tough. I have a hard time being amongst a group of 10 people and not thinking in my head, am I being weird or am I saying something weird or what is my facial expression doing right now? Like I really overthink those things. So no, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see what the future looks like, because if it is 110 people, then obviously like we'll just have to invest in a hologram of me and have a hologram of me in every office. And I'll just check in every morning through hologram mirrors. Yeah. Or I don't know, like technology is amazing. We'll create an AI version of myself.
Yeah. The historical person question. You should talk to Tesla.
That's smart. Yeah, Tesla. I was trying to think of someone innovative. I was trying to think of I wanted to say Albert Einstein again, but I already used Einstein's definition of insanity. But I was thinking like Alexander Graham Bell or like the guy that discovered gravity or something. I don't know, but
Nikola Tesla will be really helpful to you. He was on a project of making clones.
Oh, why is that helpful to me? Because I need a clone of myself?
No, that's what you just said, right? Like holograms.
Hologram. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. But I have said that before, actually. I got in trouble for saying that during COVID. I had a nurse report me for saying that I didn't have a cloning machine in the basement to produce more nurses. And I was saying it facetiously. I was like, they were short-staffed and I didn't have extra nurses to send to them. And I was trying to lighten the mood. And I said, as much as I wish, we just don't have a cloning machine in the basement. I can't just produce more nurses. And she wrote me up as being whatever, disrespectful or whatever what she thought I was being. I know. I was like, okay.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, my boss was like, did you say that we clone nurses? And I was like, I said, I wish that I could clone nurses. Anyway, it offended her deeply. Anyways, what time is it? I feel like we're deep into an hour.
9:45.
Okay. Well, have you learned enough?
Yeah, almost everything.
What else? What is there left?
Nothing.
You chose my historical figure, Tesla. All right. I'll look him up. I'll see. If there's someone else, I'll get back to you and let you know if there's someone more interesting.
Okay.
Thanks for making me cry.
Completely unintentional.
Mommy issues to the core. This was really great. And I'm glad that we finally have the opportunity to do this, Yash. One of the OGs of OBM. And I think that the future looks really bright. And I'm really excited to see where your career goes in healthcare. And I'm just really excited to see I think the next year is going to be fun. I think
Even
the next
I'm
year
excited
is
to
going to
see
be
where
fun.
my career goes in healthcare.
Yeah. Maybe you'll end up being the boss of the department that you're going into within 3 to 5 years.
I hope so.
Climb that corporate ladder. You'll do it. All right. This is the All of You podcast where we sit down with all of you. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.